So this is how most of the time there are some changes, or there are some additions to this definition also, but this is the most accepted definition of risk. Project risk is an uncertain event or condition that, if it occurs, has a positive or a negative impact, is either positive or negative, positive or a negative effect on one or more project objectives such as scope, schedule, cost, and quality. So when you are answering questions, you have to take care of it. If the question is talking about opportunities, remember those opportunities are risks, positive risks, something that you want to happen. Right? Okay. Now I have something for you. I have a question for you. See, when we are working on a project, what's the project manager and team uh, supposed to do about risk? They are supposed to identify what can be the risks on our project. What do you think will happen that will have impact on one of the four objectives? Opportunities, threats, both ways. So you have to identify those risks. Okay. So just an identification of risk is continuous through the project end to end. So just give me a few seconds. This is something that. So on any project, when the risk is identified, it becomes part of the risk register. So on my project, let's say I have identified, say, 120, 150 risks. I'm going to write only 5 here. So, and that too, I'm not going to describe them. R1, R2, R3, R4, and R5. Some of them are impacting risk. Some of them are impacting schedule. Some of them are impacting budget. Some of them are impacting both. Some of them are impacting quality. So, when I have this list of risks, it is possible that I may not be able to plan for all of these risks. Are you with me? Like, I may not have that much bandwidth to meet all of these risks. If you have realized, I don't use the term mitigate. And that is for a special reason I don't use. PMI has a specific meaning attached, which is right, for mitigating. So we will keep that term mitigating for a special case. Otherwise, we will say responding to risk. Planning for the risk and responding to risk. Okay. Coming back here, I might not have bandwidth to plan and respond to all of these risks. So what I have to do is I have to understand which are my priority risks. In fact, some of these might not be significant risks. I what I need to do is I need to keep my focus on risks that are important. So how do I decide which are the important risks? I set priority to this risk. Which risk is my top priority? Which risk is my second priority? So on, so forth. So this is the first risk. I'm just saying that the total impact is it has on my project is, let's say, 25K. R2 is one more risk. The total impact that it will have on my project in terms of currency is 40K. R3 will have an impact of 30K. R4 will have impact of, let's say, 10K. And R5 will have impact of 20K. So what I'm writing here is impact. So for prioritizing my risks, I will need to consider impact definitely. Can you tell me which is my top priority risk here? You might want to tell me on microphone or you might want to tell me on chat, but fast. Which is my top priority risk here?
R2.
R2, because the impact is big. Now let me tell you one more thing. How did we define risk? Risk is a future event which may happen. So there is a probability to every risk. So let me tell you what is the probability. Probability for R1 is 80%. There's 80% chance that, okay, this is 0.08, zero 0.8, zero point 0.8. Probability for R2 is 0.1. Probability for R3 is 0.5. Probability for R4 is 0.3. Probability for R5 is again, let's say 0.9. What does this mean? There is a big chance that R1 will happen. There is a very small chance that R2 will happen. So, shall I retain the same probability? Something which does not have much chance that it will happen. Why it should be top priority to me? How do I decide priority now? So I do assessment of every risk. I find out assessment of every risk or value of every risk. It's the same thing. I'm going to write value here, but it's also called assessment of the risk. The value is probability into impact, ITP. So this will be 25 into zero point 0.8, so 20K. 40 into zero point 0.1, so 4K. This is 30 into 0.5, so 15K. 10 into 0.3, so it is 3K. Sorry. 20 into zero point 0.9, so 18K. My priorities have changed. We realize that initially I thought that this is going to be my highest priority. But when I considered probability, my priorities have changed and looks like this will be my highest priority now. So it's not only that we find out highest priority, we usually rank the risks. We are analyzing individual risks. This is also called qualitative analysis, by the way. So each risk is being analyzed for priority. So sometimes what can happen is my project is a long duration project. Some risks I know if they happen, they will happen in near future. Let's say I'm doing a farming project. The risk is monsoon may not be good enough. But that I'm right now in month early June. If I will come to know whether monsoon is good or not in 10, 15 days, 1 month. So it's going to happen, if at all, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen immediately. On the other hand, there can be some risks which are late in my project. So if I have to consider that also, it's not that I'm not saying that it will happen with every risk, but if the risks are timing specific, I will have to consider the timing also. So let us just randomly consider that this is the risk. That's our project is 1 year project, 4 quarters. And this is the risk that will happen in second quarter. This is the risk that will happen in third quarter. This is the risk that most probably will happen in again second quarter. This is the risk that will happen in fourth quarter, and this is the risk that will happen in first quarter. So now what happens is the two risks, R1 and R5, are very nearby. See, the probability and impact is just an estimate. So 20K value and 18K value are fairly nearby values. And on top of it, R5, if it happens, will happen in the first quarter itself from the day my project starts. So maybe now this should be my priority. There can be some risks which can happen again and again. There is a frequency for those risks. Again, if we talk about monsoon, if we have a 5-year project, the risk will happen every year. So it has certain frequency. So I have to consider the risks with frequency also so that I can focus better on prioritizing the risk, planning for the risk. So I will need to focus on frequency also. The frequency, it can be anything one, I'm just now saying one, and what, okay, let's say this will happen 3 times. One and one. So something that's going to happen 3 times, something which is not too less, it's not an absolutely insignificant risk, and it's going to happen 3 times. So let me focus on this. That's how we decide priorities of the risk. Now, there's one thing. How does a project manager understand he is not necessarily an expert in risk? So, how does he understand what is the impact? How does he understand what's the probability, what's the timing, what's the frequency? He has to get that from risk experts. It's not a job that he has to do by himself. He needs to talk to related subject matter experts, understand from them what should be the data, how many times the risk is going to happen, if at all it's going to happen. Is it a near term risk? It's a far term risk. What's the impact? What's the probability? It's not a job of the project manager necessarily. So it's perfectly fine if you get that from your risk experts. Okay, so what do you consider when you are prioritizing the risks? You consider 4 things: impact of the risk, probability of the risk, that will tell you the total assessment, then timing of the risk, and frequency of the risk. These are the 4 things that every project manager will consider if he wants to consider the or if he wants to prioritize the risks. Okay. Factors to consider: probability, impact, when it's timing, of course, and frequency. So, probability, impact, timing, and frequency are the 4 things to be considered when you are prioritizing the risks. Okay. Along with these 4 factors, risk attitudes need to be considered. Okay, let me just scroll back so that there is nothing in front of you, so you are not biased right now. When I'm working on a project, Gopal, let me just give this example and then I'll come to you. I'm working on a project. I have identified a risk, or rather, I have identified 2 risks. One risk is a schedule risk, where I can see that my project will get delayed by 20%. One other risk is a budget risk, where my budget will slip by 20%. Now, if I don't have much bandwidth to plan for both the risks, how do I deal with this? I'll definitely analyze and all that. But one thing is sure, that I will also try to think about what my seniors would like me to do. Say I'm working in an organization, let's say. I know my seniors for long enough, and I know that if the schedule slips slightly, they don't mind. But if the budget slips, if they have to shell out more money, that is what pinches them. They are not in position to, so they don't like it. If I know that, I know my stakeholders' attitudes. So what I'll do is my primary focus will be on cost risk management. Once that is fulfilled, then maybe I'll go back to schedule and I'll think how to manage those schedule risks. So while planning for risks, I will always consider my stakeholders' attitudes. Different types of attitudes need to be considered, but I will always consider them. Yes, Gopal?
So from exam perspective, I'm just wondering, there are multiple uh, factors that we need to consider while assessing risk, or different, maybe different questions that might come up. So if they are only talking about a certain aspect, say, when you started your conversation, you said the risk and it says, or the cost wise, it is this for each factors. So if the question only has couple of those factors, we potentially would have to judge based on those couple of factors, right? The answers. Or do you think we cannot say as of now because not all the questions or all the
The
factors are
question
listed?
will be logic. Your question is absolutely based on theory. So my answer is you have to check what the question is asking. If whatever the question is asking, you feel that it cannot be answered with the existing information, look for the option cannot say or need more data, that kind of a thing. It will be there. The questions are always fully validated. What they usually do is, okay, I'm deviating a little, but let me complete this and then we'll take a break. You get 180 questions altogether. Out of those 180 questions, 175 questions are actually scoring questions, and 5 questions are their test ground. They are giving those questions to you to check how these questions actually sound, though they are new questions that are not yet part of the primary exam question pool. So those questions are tested out on you. Say a particular question is given to all the people who take examination in a particular week. And in a particular week, let's say 25,000 people take the examination. Then based on that, they analyze, is it a good question? Is it an easy question? Is it a difficult question? So what they do is, if they realize that people are not able to understand the question and most of them are going wrong, it's not a difficult question, but then also people are not answering correctly because people fail to understand, they will remove that question. They will not put that question in the main question bank. On the other hand, if they feel that it's a good question, fairly good question, people are able to understand when they think the information and the options, the everything is related clearly, they will add that question to the question bank. So, and in fact easy and difficult, because your examination final, your passing score depends on that. I think you're aware that there is no pre-decided passing score for this examination. If you get easy questions, your passing bar increases slightly. If you get difficult questions, your passing bar comes down little. So for that also they use the same analysis. So basically you can fairly trust them about being clear about the questions. Usually
Okay.
they will not be vague. Okay,
No,
fine.
what I was just trying to ask is if they're only mentioning a couple of factors, then we make an answer based on the factors
See, they
mentioned,
will be
right?
very clear. If they say
Clear.
a couple of factors, based on these factors, what do you think? If that is what they're saying, then clearly you have to consider only those two factors. But if they don't say this is what is given, and what is your opinion, or how would you judge this particular thing? And one of the options is can't say or need more information, you'll have to select that.
Okay.
The question makes it amply clear whether you should be considering only what is given. You don't assume anything which is not given that will always be true. Don't read too much between the lines. The questions have to be fairly straightforward. So, something, okay, so they are saying this just to misguide me. That doesn't happen. Okay, so, stay like on the main theme of the question, understand that clearly, and the question, focus on the question. It will have everything there. Don't read too much between the lines. Okay. So that is about examination. So it's about 1 hour, little more than 1 hour. So let's take a break here. Welcome back. Let's start with the same slides and let's go ahead with the risk management. Where are we here? So we were talking about stakeholders' risk tolerances just before we decided to take a break. Imagine that you're working on a project, or let me imagine that I'm working on a project where I'm working on a project. How do we go? Let's go in the order of the slides only. I'm working on a project which is a very huge project, and what I've realized is there is some new technology which is coming up. If we adopt that technology, most probably we will be able to reduce the cost by 10%. For a huge project, reduction in cost by 10% is something which you need to look for. It's an opportunity for me to save the cost on my project. But adapting to that particular technology had some cost to it also. New technology, it's just come in market. So about say 3 to 4% cost of the project, total cost of the project is what we have to invest. And if the technology, which looks fairly good, most probably it should help us reduce the total cost, including the investment. Okay, it will help us reduce the total cost by 10%. That is the situation. Now it is really a big decision on a huge project. Investment like 3.5 4% on new technology is not a decision that I can take on predictive projects. I have to approach my seniors, ask them whether we can do it. So what would my seniors say? It's an opportunity, right? It's a positive risk. So what would my seniors say? So Vajanti, you think that if we go ahead and invest in this particular technology, uh, we may be able to save 10% of the total cost. Is that right? So, yes, that is right. Now, if my stakeholders have good risk taking abilities, their nature is towards risk taking, they have good risk appetite. Okay, if they have that tendency, they have good risk taking appetite, they're risk takers. That's looks like a good chance, a good opportunity, Vayanti. I want you to work very carefully, of course. But then, if we invest in this particular new technology, it will reduce the cost by 10%, which is a big saving for us. And going forward, we might have similar projects where we will start with this new technology. We might be able to get more benefits. Let's go ahead. On the other hand, if my stakeholders, my key stakeholders, or my seniors are orthodox people who do not want to take risk, who do not like to take risk, will say it's a new technology. We need to invest something like 3 4% of the total project cost. And on top of it, it's not 100% sure that the project cost will be reduced. It's a new technology which can have bugs. We would like to wait till all the bugs are ironed out. We don't want to be the scapegoats. No, we will not take. So, this decision, this opportunity can materialize depending on risk taking ability of my seniors, risk taking ability of my stakeholders. So I should be able to judge what is their risk appetite. Okay, if it was something like 3 4% investment, I can at least go and open my mouth. If it was something like 30% investment and the benefits were according to it, I would simply say that's not something that these people will hear of, and that's real. Why waste my time in all that analysis? So you have to understand what is the risk appetite, risk taking ability of your seniors. Typically, this is used in case of new technology that's coming up, or your team needs a certain training. It's not that they need, but if you think that if a certain training is given, quality will improve and the customer satisfaction will improve. The resultant benefits would be worth, is what you think, then your seniors might want to take that call if they are good risk takers, might not want to take that call if they are not good risk takers. So you should be able to judge, is there any point asking, requesting? So that's one attitude that you should be considering, uh, how considering when you plan for risks on your project. So risk appetite is the degree of uncertainty. Uncertainty is always risk. So, is the degree of risk an entity is willing to take in anticipation of a reward? So, how much risk they can take if they see a certain reward? If you can judge that, it's good. It will help you save some costs. It will help you uh, go ahead in your project in a better way. Okay. So, if the team gets a training, quality of the deliverables may improve, cost of training may not be very high. The management may be willing to take on this risk. Cost of training is not very high. What will happen? The quality of this deliverable may not improve immediately, but the training doesn't go west. If that is what they think, they will say, okay, go ahead with that. So, risk appetite is one attitude that you have to consider for your stakeholders. The next attitude that you have to consider is risk tolerance. It is the degree, amount, or volume, it's basically total risk, of a risk that an organization or individual will be able to withstand. They will be able to bear it. So I know that, let's go with the example that I was talking about some time back. This is my project, which is a 15 weeks project. Okay, so here is where we begin and here is where we end. The project actually is now, looks like the project will get delayed and it will now be a 20-week project. So 5 weeks, 33% delay, not something that is good. I want to cover this delay. Okay. As a good project manager, it's my responsibility to finish the project in decided timeline. So I decide, okay, so for covering this risk, one and only way that I have, looking at the nature of my project, is add resources so that the work can be done faster and the project can close earlier. For adding resources, I need money. I don't have sufficient money to cover entire 5 week delay. So I have sufficient money maybe to cover 4.5 weeks delay. Not full delay I can cover. What I'll do in this case is, what is the risk tolerance of my stakeholders? Usually they say about 20% delay, let's say about 10% delay, 20% delay, anything. About 2 weeks of delay, they really expect, they say, okay, this is something that happens, we will be able to bear that. That's not a big deal. So that is what I'm aware of. So they feel that if my project closes in 17 weeks, they perhaps will not mind so much. They won't be exactly dancing with joy that why did you delayed the project by 2 weeks, but they would not mind so much. If that is what I know, what will I do? I will definitely, I will not even check if I have enough budget to cover the entire delay or not. In this case, it's a good idea to ensure that delay is something like maybe 1 week's delay. I have enough money to cover about 4.5 weeks delay. So let me cover only 4 weeks delay and bring it to something like 1 week delay. Now what will happen? Now they will not mind it. They'll say, okay, so you close your project in 16 weeks, huh? See if you can do better in the next project. Nothing more than that most probably will happen. So they can easily bear that risk. That ease with which they bear that risk is important. That is their risk tolerance. So as a project manager, if I know my seniors risk tolerance, I'll always encash on it. Okay? So that is one more attitude. The first attitude was risk appetite. The second one is risk tolerance. Now, the third one is actually extension of the second one. It is the risk. Okay. The example sponsor might accept 2 week delay to the schedule. The third one is extension of the second one, risk threshold, a point beyond which they will not be able to bear the risk, withstand the risk. That's their breaking point. So, risk threshold, which refers to measures along the level of uncertainty or the level of impact at which a stakeholder may have a specific interest. Specific interest is beyond that we cannot bear, let us close the project if it comes to that. If your project is getting delayed by about 5 weeks, a 15-week project is getting delayed by about 5 weeks, we don't have strength to bear that. Let us close that project right away so that we don't lose too much money. So that is the specific interest they may have. Below that risk threshold, the organization will accept the risk. Okay, not with ease, but if your project is getting delayed by 3 weeks instead of 5 weeks, okay, we usually accept delay till 2 weeks without complaining. This is something that will definitely impact us, hit us, but we are in position to bear that in the worst case. Anything beyond that, and no, we will need to close the project. That is what is risk threshold. Above that threshold, the organization will not tolerate the risk. So, if we're talking about the same case now, this is a 10-week project or 15-week project. It was 15 weeks, right? Now, there's some problem and it is getting delayed by 5 weeks. So, it's becoming a 20-week project. We are somewhere here, 10th week in the project. If I tell this news to my seniors, they'll say, what? A 15-week project you're saying getting delayed by 5 weeks? No way. Start closing your project. That loss is not something that we can bear. It will impact all our organization, all the projects that are going on. We don't want to do that. So that is not what they want. Then I say, okay, this is what is happening, but I have sufficient budget on the project to cover the delay by maybe 2.5 weeks. So what will happen is 15 or just say 2 weeks to make the thing simpler to calculate. I say that I have enough budget with me to cover the delay of 2 weeks. So what you are saying, Vajanti, is you will be able to close the project most probably in 17 weeks, sorry, 18 weeks. Yes, that is what I'm saying. Vajanti, that is too much. It is actually impacting us. But I understand that you are also facing a problem. We will manage somehow. But ensure that it doesn't go beyond that. We don't have strength to bear any delay beyond 18 weeks. If that is what my seniors are saying, that is their breaking point. They cannot bear more than that. So that is their risk threshold. So if I understand their risk tolerance and risk threshold, I'll usually play between that risk tolerance and threshold. See, practically what happens for a predictive project manager is he doesn't, any manager for that matter, he doesn't have enough budget or luxury of having ample money. So he has to spend his money carefully. So if he is managing the risks, he will always ensure that he doesn't cross a certain boundary. He doesn't cross the threshold boundary, and he doesn't spend so much that okay, there's no delay, zero delay. Rather than that, he works in the interest of project. What is more important, covering the delay or delivering quality? So he will do trade-offs for that and take a right decision. Okay, let me clear this. And any impact beyond a particular point is unacceptable. This is used to decide the trade-off. And my sponsor will not accept schedule delay of 15 days, so I can crash the project to a certain extent. Whatever is there, a level and beyond which they don't accept, I'll ensure that my project closes a little before that, so I stay within the limits, and I do not really have to ask for more money, which is a big no again for my organization. That is risk threshold. So these are the three attitudes that we have to consider while planning for the risk. Risk appetite, which is an attitude for positive risks or opportunities. Risk threshold, which is the extreme breaking point of the stakeholders for a negative risk. And risk tolerance, how much risk they are able to withstand. These are the three things that you have to think of.
Friends, this is Satish Kamath from Effective Project Management Academy. Many people want to do PMP trainings and they would like to know same questions, different people, and instead of every individual calling again and again on different days, what we have done is we conduct 1 hour introductory session for knowing what we cover in PMP. So in this, please join these 1 hour sessions and you will come to know what is PMP, what is expected while studying PMP, or what are the requirements from PMI side, how to apply for PMP, and all this you will know in real time because this is a real time 1 hour session for letting you know what is PMP, how to study, what benefits are there from PMP, how you will gain from PMP, how much does it cost for you, and how much time you need to spend for this. And also, of course, I will be telling you some simple tips for passing PMP. So this is what is the intention of this 1 hour session. Please join today on the following, call us on the following number.